Over 100 years ago, British ships started sailing to Africa. By 1906, Nigeria was under imperial rule from Britain. Previous to the British arriving, Nigeria consisted of many small ethnic groups which made it easy to conquer because they were ununited. This lack of a central government allowed for the British to easily exploit them and turn them against each other. Nigeria was very appealing to Europeans as it had many natural resources that could be exported. Some of the natural resources were cocoa, palm nuts, cotton, and peanuts. Another reason for imperializing was an economic competition between Britain and the Dutch for trade and empire in the Atlantic. After the Napoleonic Wars, Britain and French destroyed Dutch trade in West Africa, and Britain became a dominant force. The culture of the Nigerians was lost due to the British being more technologically advanced with steam engines and weapons that the native Africans could only dream of, so they had a slim chance of resisting the control of the British. Britain governed by indirect rule. They ruled through the existing political institution, and even though new African officials were appointed and elected to the Legislative Council, all of the executive decisions were made by the British government. The Berlin Conference. 14 European nations held a conference from 1884 to 1885 to discuss and divide Africa. The conference was held at the home of Otto von Bismarck, a German chancellor. At the Berlin Conference, the nations divided Africa without the consent of any African ruling official.
Today, more than 100 years after Nigeria was officially imperialized, we can see the effects in political and environmental conflicts. A particular environmentalist, Ken Saro-Wiwa, who was born in 1941, stood up for the land of his fellow Ogoni people. Ogoniland, which is in the Niger Delta, suffered severe environmental damage from abusive petroleum dumping from oil extraction. Saro-Wiwa organized and led a non-violent campaign against environmental abuse from multinational oil companies, such as Shell. In 1995, the Nigerian government found a way to declare Saro-Wiwa guilty, and he was arrested and hanged. As a result of Nigeria's illegal execution, Nigeria was suspended from the Commonwealth of Nations for 3 years. The Ogoni people were not the last people to suffer from the greed for oil and money from oil companies. In the western part of the world, the oil spill blowout in the Gulf of Mexico had hogged our headlines. Yet across the Atlantic Ocean in the Niger Delta, at least 3 accidental oil spills had taken place around the same time. Here, 30 million people have established homes, but at the same time, major oil companies seek fortune where it is one of the richest sources of petroleum in the world. 1/2 billion gallons of oil has been accidentally spilled over the past 50 years, causing it to be one of the most polluted places on Earth. The local and international report claims that the corroded oil platforms, pumping stations, pipelines, and shipping terminals that cross all of the Delta are subject to breaks and leaks. In addition, vandalism is a high threat to these oil stations, for thieves drill holes in the pipelines and then sell their stolen oil on the black market. The corrupt government did not regulate or police oil fields, allowing thieves to continue stealing. Although poisoned water, destroyed forests, wetlands, and fisheries suffer as a result of this poor law enforcement, no one speaks up. Nemo Bassi, head of Friends of the Earth International in Nigeria, said, "They are amazed that the President of the U.S. can be making speech about oil spill daily, because in Nigeria, people there would not hear a whimper."
Imperialism in Nigeria had many lasting effects, both good and bad. Though the British thought they were helping civilize the native Nigerians by bringing them new and improved technology and transportation, they ultimately hurt the Nigerians by separating the indigenous tribes when they made new borders. The tribes were then put under the control of a British-appointed chief that had limited power over the tribes. When the British took control of the Nigerian tribes, they also took over the natives' education and, in attempts to westernize them, taught the natives English and converted them to Christianity. The British took on the white man's burden and felt that it was their duty to bring the indigenous people into their faith. After teaching everyone English, the British formally changed the national language to English. This hurt the native Nigerians because they lost their unique native languages and a big part of their culture. Even though the British hurt the Africans and their culture, imperialism had its benefits. It brought the Nigerians into the modern era of education, medicine, and sanitation. It also ended the slave trade, and a better transportation system enabled a modern economy.